Yeah, I escaped from Cambodia to Thailand. I had to, at night I had to run, and hide, try to get through to Thailand. Go with Khmer Rouge and go through with all that, the water, guns and bombs.
My friend Daria and her husband introduced my husband, so we got married, and I decided to live here with him.
I came to the United States because my husband was already here. And I stayed in Colombia because I was attending college, so I waited until I graduate. And I graduated in 1980. And because winter was coming, my husband asked me to wait until the spring, and that's why I waited until the 1981, and I came here in that year with my oldest daughter.
Well, we actually initially arrived in what is known as the Rio Grande Valley in Texas, which, for those who are familiar, it takes in towns like McAllen. We went to Weslaco and lived in a small farm, rural area in Weslaco. In those days, we lived in a small farmhouse surrounded by cotton fields and orange and grapefruit groves. As a matter of fact, my first work as a young kid, probably 4 or 5 years old, was accompanying my mother in the cotton fields of Texas, which is quite an ordeal for anyone familiar with the southern Texas summer heat in the cotton fields. And it's something you never forget.
I was born 9 months after my parents came. Both my parents are Iranian. My father came here to go to school, and in Miami, Oklahoma, out of all places. And my mother came to join him shortly after that. But what was interesting is she couldn't come here unless she was married. Like, she couldn't leave her family unless she was already married. So my parents had a proxy marriage, which they had a big ceremony in Iran where my grandfather filled in for the groom. So the marriage was legal by the time my mother came here, and she joined him in Miami, Oklahoma. And 9 months later, I was born in Miami, Oklahoma, to 2 Iranians.
I was 25 when I came to this country, and that was 30 years ago. I came from Pakistan, and before I migrated here, I visited America before I migrated.
After the Soviet Union dissolved in 1991, there was a great need for contemporary American studies program, and I was one of the first faculty in the former Soviet Union who would try to create a contemporary, comprehensive American studies program.
Sometimes we got a gun pointed at the middle of the jungle, and we had to answer all that, what they ask a question, where you going and all that stuff. You gotta tell them, and you gotta give them some goal, because you don't have money that time, so you can't give them so you can go to the next route.
The feeling I got was like a feeling of a sense of tranquility, peace, hope, and everything was exactly the way I expected.
When I moved to this country, I was thinking that I'm going to have a very good life here, and things will be easier for me. And I was very happy when I moved. I used to miss my family that I left behind, but I was happy.
The thing was, immediately I realized the punctuality of people. I had a couple of appointments scheduled, and people were there right on time, and I said, oh boy, this is different. And so I had to adjust to that kind of environment. In many parts of the world, people usually will say, oh, I'll see you around 3 p.m., and sometimes they will show up at 3:30 or even 4. But the punctuality impressed me.
I was expecting basically everything that this country offers and shows basically through the movies and everything you see. But I guess my first impression was once I came out and saw the highways, expressways. It was very clean, everything. The organization more than anything.
I remember very clear the very first moment when I put my foot on American land. It was airport, and in every airport, like in every public place, you can smell this great smell. I think it's a smell of coffee, smell of American coffee, which smells great, tastes bad, as we all know. But there was a smell of this coffee, and I made like a whiff, and I told myself, that's how the hope smells. That's the smell of hope. It was so clean and fresh. Everything used to look very neat and clean. And to me, I used to see it as a heaven.
It's like feel like heaven, put it this way. You can go anywhere you want. You can go. You don't have to hide anymore. But your feeling not the same because you used to live in a Khmer Rouge, territory. So you don't feel like fit in yet because you don't know what's going on. But the longer you live here, the better you feel like, oh, this heaven. It's like heaven. Yeah.
When we came to Elgin, what really impressed me was the first day my daughter attended schools in Streamwood, when she was running after me after school, and she told me, Mom, nobody's making fun of me because I'm wearing glasses. She never said anything to me before, so in that moment I was assuming that at the school she was attending in Chicago, somebody was making fun of her. And she even told me, even my teacher wear glasses. So in that moment, I feel that was the right place to move.
We decided to move to Elgin because my husband liked this suburb. He likes the landscape here, the peace, everything here he likes.
Probably when I was about 8 or 9 years old, people in that environment are constantly talking about El Norte. You're going further north, getting into the migrant mainstream where you follow certain routes. And we came up by way of a caravan, and my recollection was that we were going to head to Montana because the word is the further north you go, the more money you make. So we were going to head to Montana, but somehow we ended up in Nebraska. And so I also learned the joys of working in the beet fields of Nebraska. From there, the people dispersed to various Michigan, Wisconsin, the farm labor. My father had a friend who lived in Joliet, Illinois at the time, who convinced my father to come to the Joliet area, which is where we first arrived briefly. There, I recall we arrived in the fall, or close to the fall, when near Oswego, on a farm where we partook in the tomato harvest at a migrant camp. And we were there, I guess, for the duration of the harvest. My father then got a job with Material Service Corporation here in the Elgin area. And we came to Elgin, and we've been here ever since.
We are in Elgin for 30 years, yeah. And my husband has a big family here. They have been here, like some of his relatives are here for 50 years. But I'm here. I came to Elgin 30 years ago.
Well, first time I came to Elgin, I still in high school. You know, I like it's downtown. Walk around, come to Jerry's barbershop. That's how I met Jerry's. And when later in life, I came to go get my barber license. I come to work in downtown Elgin with Jerry's and Central Barbershop. It's, you know, nice. People are nice, and all the business are growing. Meet a lot of nice people in downtown Elgin.
Well, let me preface all this by saying I've traveled to a lot of countries, and by far I do think the United States is the best country ever, because you can be really whatever you want to be here.
Freedom for me has probably different meanings than freedom for other people. For me, it's really to have the opportunity to make choices and to go after your dreams. My dream was always to have a master's degree, to have a doctorate degree, to be able to provide a really good education for my daughters, for my family. And that's really what I obtained here. It was not easy. I had to work really hard. My husband was the only one working, and I was studying. I had to drop my daughter at school, and then I went to the train station, take the train to Chicago downtown, attend the school, and then come back, pick her up, and take it home. Even in winter, I was not driving a car. We only have one car. So it was not easy, but if you work hard, you can do it. And that was the dream I was following. And I was lucky enough to be able to complete it.
Well, actually, you know, my experience in the beet fields of Nebraska, I tell people, was the origin of my ambition to be a lawyer. There was a small incident I tell people about in the beet fields of Nebraska where the workers out in the field, whom I had joined, were approached by the boss man, for lack of a better term, who started complaining or yelling at them about the way they had done certain things in the field. No one there spoke English, so at the age of 8 or 9 years old, I stepped forward to be the spokesman for the group and explained to the gentleman, you know, what had transpired and why they did what they did. He appeared satisfied, left, and all the workers thought it was somewhat humorous that I had been their advocate, and they started calling me el abogado, the lawyer. And I tell people that's when I decided I liked the term. I liked the job, and I said, you know, that sounds pretty good. I think that's what I'd like to do.
The freedom of America is cannot describe, because you can do whatever you want to do. You can do. In Cambodia, you cannot, you know, before you cannot say too much because the Khmer Rouge, and if you say something wrong, you know, you being punished. You're not gonna be survive if you say too much, you know, to the government.
When I was back home, everything about me was decided by my elders, by my parents. And here, I make my own decisions. And to me, that is a very, I see that as a freedom here, because like my decisions about my life, I didn't even think of making my own decisions, because that's how I was raised, and they used to make the decisions, and I used to said okay. And in the beginning, when I used to make my own decisions, it was kind of hard because I was used to depending on others, but I learned to be more self-depending on myself, and
well, it's just wonderful. I think it's such a wonderful thing to be able to go and speak your mind, I guess, and don't have so much of the, the censors or the people trying to basically, shut you up or make you stop saying whatever you feel like saying. Just remembering when I was growing up, I was 18 years old, and the government in Bolivia basically was taken over by the military. It was a military coup, and I was 17 years old, and I ended up protesting, basically barricading the streets or something, and unfortunately we got caught so young, and I ended up seeing all these high-ranking military people, and they very much scared us that they were going to throw us out somewhere in the mountains. They were warming up the airplanes and things like that. And once I came here, it was just unbelievable, basically seeing people, they can go and protest in favor of whatever.
A lot of times we talk about freedoms in the United States and the opportunity to express our opinions, and we do take that for granted. We look at last year when you had the people marching in the streets of Chicago and Los Angeles and New York, talking about immigration rights and people who were illegal, a number of them marching with flags, both United States flags and flags of their country, saying, we demand citizenship. We demand the opportunity to live in this country and work. And that's something that you would never even imagine happening in Cuba. And so you would not do in Venezuela, and you would not even do in Mexico. They do it, but not to the extent they do it here. And they would certainly not demand those rights.
Freedom to choose who your leaders are. And we know that many people do not exercise that right to choose those individuals. But it's freedom for them. But at the same time, you heard the system that generated the freedoms when you do not vote. And so voting is very, very critical. It's critical because you're not voting for only the President of the United States or the congressman or congresswoman, the representatives. This country is the leader of the free world. And so when you vote for the president and the leaders, you're voting for leaders who shape the world. And so when you have only a small portion of the people voting, then you are shortchanging the world. And other parts of the world, you have a lot of people voting.
What I learned from other countries is a lot like Wilde said. I think you learn a lot more about your own country by traveling to other countries. And what I have learned from traveling I've lived in Mexico, I've been in Bolivia a lot, long periods of time. I've lived in Europe, and I've been to the Middle East also to visit my family. I don't think people here appreciate what they have, and they don't take advantage of the freedoms that they have, like the right to associate, the right to get involved in your government, the right to vote. I get very upset when I hear someone doesn't vote, because I know that people die to vote. They will die. They will risk their lives in other countries to vote, and that's very sad for me.